What is going on, my fellow warriors? I got a fun little topic for you guys today. I've been going over some new books over the last who knows how long, because quarantine's been a mind puzzle I still haven't quite figured out. But I think I've completed like 5 or 6 books now, and the last one was super interesting. I want to have a chat with you guys about it. It's largely based around mindset. Slightly different topic today than I normally cover, which is strictly blood sugars, right? But don't worry, I weave in the blood sugars towards the end. So without any further ado, let's get into our theme song. I've spent the last 10 years pushing the limits while identifying trends and patterns in my type 1 diabetes management. Follow along as I learn, apply, and share the fitness, nutrition, and lifestyle strategies that I've learned from diabetes experts around the world. The real question is, how can we live fearlessly with diabetes while maintaining stable blood sugars? This podcast is here to give you the answer. My name is Matt Vandevecht, head coach and co-founder of FTF Warrior, and welcome to Part of My Pancreas. Alright guys, so like I said, I've completed a few books. The most recent one was actually an audiobook. It's my first ever audiobook, and let me say, that's pretty sweet. Drove back and forth to San Diego over the weekend because it was my little nephew's first birthday, and it was very exciting because I got to share it with him. It's going to be my birthday this coming week, and so we shared June, which was pretty cool. But the book that I got to finish while driving, because it was an audiobook, which makes you feel super productive, it's amazing, was The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. Now we jump into kind of a new topic that I've been toying with, researching, and it's Stoicism. And essentially, and I'm going to oversimplify this, it is you control your own perception of the world around you. You can choose to view something like an obstacle in your life as either an opportunity to prove your strength. You can choose to perceive it as how to not fail, right? What not to do, or you can choose to see it as something that's going to stop you in your tracks for good, right? And with that perception, that lesson that I learned through that book, I remembered a lesson I learned years ago about something called the Locus of Control. Now, the Locus of Control, I'm not talking about the lotus flower, even though it is beautiful. The Locus of Control was originally thought up by, let me think about this, I don't want to ruin it. I think it was Julian Robert? I'm going to look it up real quick just to make sure I don't mess this up. Julian B. Rotter in 1954. There we go. I'll just read the definition since I have it right here. Locus of control is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces, have control over the outcome of their events in their lives. Okay? So essentially, there are two variants of the locus of control. There is an internal locus of control and there is an external locus of control. The internal locus of control says that I make my future happen. I am in control, I am in charge. Everything that I do in my life, the actions that I take, the thoughts that I think have an impact on myself and my future. Somebody who's living with an external locus of control thinks that life happens to them, that they are powerless, that they believe in fate, that nothing they do will change the course of their life. And because of the two very different locuses of control, it's actually used in personality types tests, which is pretty cool. But what I want you guys to think about is, and just briefly take a second to think about this, pause it if you need to, do you have an internal locus of control? Do you think that the choices and actions you take today have an impact on your future and that you are responsible? That's key. You are taking responsibility for your future. Or do you have an external locus of control? Do you think that life happens to you, that nothing you do matters, and ultimately fate cannot be changed? Okay, so think about that with me for a second while I dive into a story. When I was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which at this point was just over 10 years ago, I would say I focused more on the external locus of control. I thought that life was happening to me. I thought it wasn't fair. I was pissed that I had type 1 diabetes out of nowhere. I thought, why me? I don't deserve this, right? I was very active. I ate healthy. I thought I did everything right. Why do I have an autoimmune disease now? And I was upset, to say the least. Now, that was a rough month for me overall. For those of you who've heard my story, there was a lot going on that month. A lot of reasons for me to be depressed and angry and frustrated at the world. But type 1 diabetes, on December 23rd, 2009, that was kind of the icing on the cake. Figuratively speaking, because I thought that I couldn't have icing anymore. My doctor, of course, told me that I could never eat sugar again of any kind, and he was wildly misinformed. They gave me the wrong insulin, and it was just a mess, to say the least. But I thought life was happening to me. I thought that from that moment on, I had no control over my life. And I would count that as having an external locus of control. I thought that type 1 diabetes was my new future, that nothing I could do would change that future, and ultimately that I was powerless. And I refused to take responsibility of the current situation that I was in. And like, Matt, how could you take responsibility for an autoimmune disease? That doesn't make sense. It's not your fault. I know, but hear me out. Years later, and years, I finally realized I did have some power. I could take responsibility for my new autoimmune disease. At that point, it wasn't new though, it was like 4 or 5 years later, when I finally decided I need to start taking care of myself. I had this realization internally that if I didn't take care of myself, I was currently on the path towards diabetic complications, if not worse, which of course we all know is death. And I didn't like that. Did not like that one bit. So I made a choice in that moment to start taking action towards crafting the future that I wanted to live, right? I started taking action by testing my blood sugar, something I did not do, hardly ever. In fact, there was a point, I was actually living in New York City at that point in my life, and I'm from California, so it's a ways from home. My mom would call every once in a while to check in, just a wonderful mother. And she'd ask, how the blood sugar's doing. And I'd always say, I don't know. And she's like, what are you talking about? And I'd always respond like, oh, Mom, I don't even know where my blood sugar tester is. There's a pause. It's like, oh. And I could tell she's hurting on the other side of the phone because she knows that if I don't take care of my diabetes, it's going to take care of me, right? In a not so nice way. And she responded very lovingly every time. She's very caring, very patient with me, knew that I made my own choices, but ultimately I had to make that choice to take responsibility of my own life. And it was at that point, 4 or 5 years in, where I had that shift in my mindset, a shift to an internal locus of control, realizing that my actions do impact my future directly. And if I don't make that change, then my future may not even exist. Especially not in the way that I had hoped it would exist, right? Maybe missing some limbs, maybe my sight would be affected, organ failure, even death. Even death. I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted to have an amazing life, and I wanted to live a long time, long, healthy, happy life. And so I had to make that shift mentally to an internal locus of control where I decided I am going to take action for my future, and that my actions have a direct impact on that future. I can literally craft my future how I want it to be. Now, of course, I cannot predict the future, I cannot guarantee the future, but I can do everything in my power today to make that future more likely to happen, right? Does that make sense? So as we have this internal locus of control, we now have the ability to begin crafting our future, right? But there's different ways we can look at this within diabetes. One is, take action today. If you're listening or watching and you have not yet reached that point of, I need to take care of myself, that snap, that moment in your life when you realize, if I don't take care of myself today, I'm going to develop diabetic complications, because that will happen. That's a fact. If you do not take care of your diabetes, you are on a downhill slope. And the longer you remain on that downhill slope, the more speed you pick up and the more likely you will develop complications or worse. The sooner you can have that revelation that if I do not take care of myself, I am headed down a very dangerous and scary path. The sooner you have that epiphany, the better off you'll be. Had I not had that epiphany until now, 10 years down the road, I would likely be in a much worse position than I am now. But because I had that early on, and I won't say it was at the beginning, like I said, it's a couple years in, but because I had that early on, before it was 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, I can proudly say I do not have diabetic complications. I am so happy to report that. And there was that shift in my life, right, where I decided to take action, to take responsibility for where my life was headed. And you have that choice today as well, whether you have external or internal, to have that realization that if I don't take care of myself, it is my fault. while type 1 diabetes might not be my fault, right? Because autoimmune, we still don't fully understand what triggers type 1 diabetes. I know for a fact it wasn't because I was overweight or eating bad or not active, right? But I have it. Life threw this thing at me. I have type 1 diabetes now. I don't have control over that. But what I do have control over is how I react to what life has thrown at me. And you do too. Whether you choose to react positively or negatively is completely and solely up to you. Nobody else can control how you react. And that's a hard truth to swallow for a lot of people. To realize that no one else can save them. Now, as a child, maybe your parents gave you insulin, they tested your blood sugar, but at a certain point, you should be taking care of yourself. At a certain point, you have to take responsibility for how your future will turn out. And if you choose not to take responsibility, then those complications, those issues you run into, they are your fault. And it's hard to accept that. To realize that if you choose not to take care of yourself today, that in the future, you have only yourself to thank. Now, I'm not saying that we all have the same access to everything healthcare-wise. The healthcare system is broken, right? There's not equal access to insulin or CGMs or insulin pumps or even doctors or endocrinologists. But what you can do is make the choice to do everything in your power to take care of yourself starting today. Ultimately, that is your best chance for survival. It is your best chance to craft the future you desire and to live the life of your dreams. And it all starts with you and your internal locus of control. So, you've heard this message. Maybe you're getting tingly and your hairs are standing on their end like they are for me. I'm getting pumped about this. But what are you going to do about it? If the message stops here and you do nothing, you will see nothing in return. You will receive nothing, right? But if you take this message and take action, then you are able to start this snowball towards success. You're able to start taking control of your life, of your future. You're able to take control of your health, of your blood sugars, spend more time in range, which then equals more time in happiness, right? If we're all whack out of range, out of homeostasis, then our bodies are continually, demanding all of this attention from us. If I'm sitting at 300 blood sugar and then I drop to 40 and then I go back to 350, I can guarantee you my mind is not 100% in the now, in present, living in the moment, because I'm thinking about my diabetes. I don't want to be thinking about my diabetes. I want to be focused on the moment, enjoying time with family and friends. Like this weekend, I got to spend time with my nephew. He is so adorable. He's 1 year old now. I cannot get over it. Oh my goodness. But I was able to be present because my diabetes was in check, because I have an internal locus of control, because I took action and responsibility for where I am at in my life. So, if you're trying to take action, there's a couple steps you can follow, right? My first step back in the day when I first made this realization was I needed to test my blood sugars. I started off with once a day. That was difficult for me, but I did it. I asked for accountability from my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. Step 2, I decided to start testing before each meal. That was difficult too. Step 3, step 4, step 5, these are all small steps towards success. It doesn't have to be one giant step where all of a sudden you have everything working for you. It doesn't work that way. You have to take small baby steps. Now, if you're looking for help with those baby steps, I highly encourage you to seek out books for education, journals to track your blood sugars, which we have on our website, programs to learn about how your diabetes can be managed, what things affect your blood sugars, and from there on out, try and craft the best medical team and or coaching community that you can. You need to take action today. And I want to encourage you to form that switch. Start it off moving towards that internal locus of control. Okay? Doesn't mean that you have to be 100% internal. You can always incorporate external factors, but I believe that the internal locus of control, taking responsibility for your life, is going to lead to you crafting the future that you desire most. And to me, that is how we live our happiest lives, when we are in control. So, if you're looking forward to having those controlled numbers to having more knowledge on diabetes and taking action today, I highly encourage you to go over to diabetesinaction.com. I've got a full training there. The training's like an hour long where I talk about how blood sugars are impacted by different activities and meals and all that great stuff. It's a free training I want to give to you guys. So go over, head over to diabetesinaction.com, watch the training, and we love hearing from you guys. If you love these episodes, if you want to know more about these types of things, if you like mindset stuff, let me know. If you're watching on YouTube, drop a comment below. If you're on Spotify or iTunes, drop us a review on iTunes. I love hearing about what you guys think, because as you know, the nature of podcasting, I don't get to interact with my audience. It's a little bit different. So leave us a review on iTunes. I'd love to hear what you guys think. So one last time, if you want more info on how to really dial in your diabetes management, head over to diabetesinaction.com. Thanks guys, have an amazing day, and keep up the fight.